All right, welcome. So today we are working on day 3 of the notes from Unit 8. I am on page 9 here of your packet. Today we're doing the same thing, so I'll be using the yellow sheet and referring to the yellow sheet. But it's a little bit different. So when you start looking at the problems, you can start right away. See, there's a little bit different. There's an equal sign. Now you are gonna work with one side and one side only. So only work with one side. Do not work with one, get stuck, and then start working with the other. I'm trying to make one side look like the other side. Always look out for, identities. So right away here you have the squared and the -1. Convert to sines and cosines. I don't think it's a last resort. I think kind of start to do that early if you can. But always start with the more complicated stuff, because usually the more complicated stuff you can do more with so always start with the more complicated side, because when you look at this, I can do stuff with sine squared, and if that's the way you want to go, that's fine, but you can always do more stuff with the more complicated side. So for instance, from the secant squared -1. Alright, so secant squared -1. So -1, I bring that over. Now I replace the top with tangent squared theta. Okay. I'm not going to go and do anything with the sine. I'm going to keep working just with this left side. So I kind of have, but I drew the line down, so I'm only working with the left side here. Alright, so tangent is sine squared over cosine squared. Secant is 1 over cos squared. So you can see I have sine squared, which is what you're trying to get. So really, just keep working with the one side and try to get to the other side. That's really what you're doing. So for example, on this next one, verify that this really does equal cosecant. Alright, it may not be pretty, but I'm going to get common denominators. So I'm going to multiply by sine theta here and sine theta here. So I have sine squared theta on top. On the bottom I have sine theta, and I'm not going to distribute. I don't want to do that yet. Maybe later, but let's leave it alone for a second, see what happens. Oopsie, sorry, that's a plus. Alright, on this side, I multiply with 1 plus cos theta. Okay, so, that's a plus sign. So I distribute here, so I have cosine plus cosine squared theta over sine times 1 plus cos theta. Alright, as one fraction, I have sine theta on the bottom. I have 1 plus cos theta, so just keep them separate for now. I have sine squared theta plus, I'm going to rearrange these because I want the squares to be together. Cosine squared theta plus cos theta. Alright, right away, this information, sine squared theta plus cosine squared theta, I can replace. So that part becomes 1. So it's 1 plus cosine of theta over sine theta times 1 plus cos theta. Now I'm glad I did distribute here on the bottom, because this whole top cancels with that whole parentheses here. So in other words, I have 1 over sine theta, which is my cosecant. Yay, that's what he wanted. So I know where I want to end. I just got to work along the way to get there. Alright, so when you look at these, right side looks easier, so it's just negative, and then the left side is here. So right away, I have tangent squared theta plus 1. Hopefully that's leading you to, okay, look at the yellow sheet. I replace it with secant squared theta. Cosine theta minus 1 is going to be, well, cosine minus 1. So if I have cosine squared u equals 1 minus sine squared u, I move the 1 over, is a negative sine squared u. So this is a good sign because I need to have a negative in the problem, and now there's the negative from the sine squared. Sine squared theta is 1 over cosine. Remember, it's squared for secant, so it's squared for cosine, times negative sine squared theta. I multiply the tops, I have negative sine squared theta over cosine squared theta. And sine squared over cosine squared, since they're both the same exponent, I can change them into tangent squared. And I have a negative or a negative 1 in front, so that's what I want. Alright, one of these next two, so let's just do example 4 here. You can see again, common denominator, so fractions are more complicated with non-fractions. So on each side, I want to multiply by whatever's missing. So I have 1 minus sine theta, and I have 1 plus sine theta. So this has 1 minus, this whole thing stays as a unit. So I need to multiply by 1 plus sine, I guess it's alpha, sorry. The other side, 1 minus sine alpha. If you want to change it to x, change it to x. Okay. So the top, 1 times that is just 1 plus sine alpha. And then 1 minus sine alpha, 1 plus sine alpha. Then I have 1 minus sine alpha over alpha, and then 1 minus sine. Alright, so that's the whole fractions, what they look like. We're going to combine them into 1. So I have 1 plus sine. You can start, if you can see it, you can start eliminating and combining the top. Okay, so some of you, we talked about yesterday, the bottoms are the same, so it doesn't make 2 or anything. You just leave the same denominator. So it's like adding fractions. If I add 1/3 and 1/3, I get 2/3. I don't get just 2, I get the thirds. The bottom, the denominator stays the same. Okay, my sine and my sine cancel out. Okay, because one's positive, one's negative, so I have 2 on top now. So I'm getting close because I'm starting to get a 2. 1 minus sine theta and 1 plus sine theta. Doesn't matter the order. Alright, now there's nothing more I can do at the top, so what I want to do is FOIL this. I initially didn't want to because I didn't want to change it, but because I can't get anywhere else without it, I need to FOIL the top. So 1 plus sine alpha minus sine alpha minus sine squared alpha. So top is still 2. The bottom, I just have 1 plus, nope, sorry, 1 minus sine squared alpha. Go to your yellow sheet. This is on the yellow sheet. 1 minus sine squared. So you replace it with cosine squared. Okay, and again, I just take the 2 out to the front, and this is actually 1 over cosine squared alpha. So if cosine squared is on the bottom, it means it was a 1 over that, so it's 2 times secant squared alpha. Okay, which is what we wanted. So the nice thing is you know where you should be ending and finishing. The harder part is just trying things along the way until you get there. Alright, so have a good weekend. We'll talk to you soon. Bye.